This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on World Water Day and Catch the Rain campaign. The participants are Suresh Babu SV, Director of Rivers, Wetlands and Water Policy, World Wildlife Fund India, and Sanjay Jha, journalist.
Water shortages already affecting billions of people around the world are expected to worsen in the coming decades. It's linked to drought, pollution, rising sea levels, and poor management of water. Today we are celebrating the World Water Day, and we have seen water uses is increased by 1% every year over the next 3 decades, as the UN report has said. Now the groundwater will grow in importance as climate change and human exploitation sinks surface supplies like lakes and reservoirs. How big is this a challenge for a country like India?
It's a big challenge for us, and I think we need to see water as a part of a system. We have our rivers, we have our wetlands, we have our groundwater, and all the three along with the catchments, that makes a system, and we need to manage the system together, and then only we will be able to manage this crisis. On a positive note, I wanted to say that there are solutions that exist, and there are steps taken by hundreds of people across our country, and I think that should give us the inspiration and the solutions to go forward. As you rightly said, the food consumption will grow, water demand will increase. We are already dependent on groundwater for more than 2/3 of our irrigation. That scenario is there. Now, what do we do about it? So there are practices which can reduce your water usage. You can increase your crop water productivity. One of the positive, inspiring stories, this is part of the Ramganga irrigation system, and Ramganga is an important tributary of the Ganga. Farmers grow sugarcane, and sugarcane, as we know, is a water guzzling crop. Positive side to it that there are practices which can reduce the water usage by 30%. We went to a small Krishi Vigyan Kendra in Bijnor, and they had the approach furrow irrigation and using a small instrument called the trencher. And the farmers adopted it. 10 people adopted it, and it's slowly shown impact because groundwater pumping reduced, water usage reduced, the amount of effort that one would put into de-weeding and other things reduced, crop water productivity increased. So it's a win-win for the farmers. And what happened is, the story is not that. These farmers have pledged to bring that water back into a small river called Karula, which is actually a tributary of the Ramganga. Again, very inspirational. Let us look at wetlands. The Global Wetlands Report, world has lost 35% of its wetlands ever since 1970. And we are also saying that, the wetlands, lakes, ponds, etc., the rate of decline is 3 times faster than the forest. And India is dotted with 7.5 lakh wetlands. And it just overlays with the number of villages. So every village will have 1 or 2 wetlands to manage. And if those wetlands are managed carefully, without dumping waste into it, without encroaching it, keeping the inlet canals, inlet channels clean, the water will flow into the wetlands. Wetlands will recharge groundwater, and our groundwater crisis can be mitigated. The urgency is that we give urgent attention to wetlands. Wetlands need to be preserved. Again, there are hundreds of stories. Every day you look at newspaper, someone somewhere in one part of the country is having a story to say that, okay, I've rejuvenated a small pond. How do we scale this up into our villages across the country, and how do we make it a mainstream agenda? And so, 1, water demand management in agriculture. 2, the resources management in terms of our wetlands. This is going to sort of lead us into a water secure future. And there are so many steps that has been taken by both individuals, local district administrations, the central government. Recently, they launched a Wetland Mitra program, where the idea is to inspire as many people to come forward for wetland conservation as possible and give them recognition as the people who are friends of the wetlands, who are going to work and preserve our wetlands for future. Now, the challenge is also looking at the urban side of the story. Our cities are growing, and our urbanization pressure is so huge, and we are already 40% people of the country living in urban areas, which is expected to grow even further. Now, unless we consider water footprint as an important decision-making indicator, we are not going to be in a safe zone in future. Why I'm saying this is because most of the cities are now eyeing for piped water. They are extracting water from rivers far from their own cities, traveling, the water travels hundreds of kilometers, the transmission losses, cost of pumping, etc. And most importantly, people get disconnected. Water is coming in my tap and I'm disconnected to the river. So we need to bring that people and the river connect back. And unless we manage our urban water demand, because if 50% people are living in our cities, and we need to devise a paradigm where people respect their water and people take steps to reduce their water demand.
As you rightly pointed out, we need to initiate this culture of water conservation so people start respecting the importance of water. India as a developing country has a huge problem of water scarcity, and it's increasing, affecting tens of millions of our vulnerable population. We have a 16% of the world's population, but only 4% of the world's fresh water resources are available in India. And we have seen almost one-fifth of India is affected by drought each year. And this is going to accentuate more with increasing population and groundwater depletion. Large part of country, we have already seen crisis of drinking water. And NITI Aayog's report says by 2030, India's water demand will be twice its supply. How are we going to tackle this problem?
I think we need to adopt a practical approach here, which combines several interventions. So it's not one solution that fits all. So right from demand management to supply side interventions to institutional mechanisms to empowering citizens to take decisions and actions to save their fresh water is going through the challenge that we are facing today. And traditionally also we used to have droughts, but people used to know that, used to be a tanka in Rajasthan which used to harvest that 100 millimeters of rain from their rooftops, and they used to survive the drought and the lean period. And that system has to come back. And there is a lot more states now looking at rainwater harvest in a big way. So that is at an individual level. You demand your water, you manage your wastewater, you look at your own footprint and inspire others to take action. So that is at an individual level. But at a collective level, again, I'll emphasize here that, groundwater cannot be created. It's a finite resource. All that we need to do is to help, one, reduce the abstraction of groundwater, because unnecessary losses of fresh water is happening in irrigation systems, through the transmission systems in urban centers, through the industrial processes. We need to plug those inefficiencies. So water saved is actually water created. India is said to have 33 million wells across the country, and if you actually overlay it with the number of wetlands and number of villages that we have, I think the solution lies with management of these wetlands. Now, for that, we need a strong institutional mechanism. And again, India has tried out many of this. The Pani Panchayat concept, the concept of water users associations, where people are actually budgeting water based on the availability and also the monsoonal patterns. There are enough examples within the country who could actually show us the way. And the only thing is that, we need to learn. Because of the problems that you cited, so it's also important that we look at our development paradigm a little differently. For instance, can hydrology, the water availability, be the determining factor for deciding on a particular development in a particular area? We cannot expect water-intensive industry coming up in a water-stressed area. What I'm trying to say is, how do we bring in hydrology and ecology into as a determining factor when we decide on the development project? I'll give you a simple example. Today we all are worried about network connectivity, etc. Have you ever thought of a riverine connectivity concept? A river has to flow from upstream to downstream, from cities to rural areas to the sea. Because our demands are growing, we need to abstract water, so the river gets fragmented. We again are not worried about the floodplains in our areas. Floodplains are important for our groundwater security. What are we doing to sort of save our floodplains and floodplain wetlands? Can we actually come up with models to save our floodplains so that our cities are water secure, our rural areas are water secure? So once monsoon brings in that water and sediment, it's a fertile land. It recharges groundwater and you use it later. Cities like Delhi, it's very, very important that these floodplains are protected. So we need these measures, if you were to sort of take the challenge seriously and overcome it. And I'm very inspired because as you travel across the country, you see many people who are taking these positive actions, and these are the guys who will show us the way going forward. And all that we need is to give them the support and blessings with ideas, with innovation, with investment, so that, they can carry forward the work and mainstream their work.
Absolutely. So there is obviously awareness about saving the water. And the Union government has consolidated all water-related schemes under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. The government has planned to provide each rural household with a safe tap drinking water by 2024. And these efforts are quite praiseworthy. And it needs help and it needs support on the ground from public. Because the government can only lay down the pipe, but if people are not going to conserve the water, that is going to be a big, big challenge. What kind of, efforts we need to get from public to be able to achieve the government's dream of every household with the safe tap water?
Very important point here, sustainability is the key. And I think when the Jal Shakti Abhiyan was launched a couple of years back, the government also said that it has to become a Jan Andolan because we need ownership, we need stewardship of all the stakeholders who are involved in water. You are the owner of your own water resource, and so unless you imbibe that sense of pride and ownership and give them enough capacity. Because there are models again from Gujarat and other places where water users association have been so empowered that they know how to monitor groundwater, how to repair and maintain their water infrastructure, how to manage a wetland. So all these adds up, and as you rightly said, without the ownership of local stakeholders, this cannot be sustained. Therefore, the fundamental part is also decide on what interventions are needed based on the inputs from the local stakeholders themselves. And so a participatory approach, as we say, will go a long way in ensuring that these infrastructure that is created for water supply remain sustainable. And behavior change is the key. So you have early adopters who believes in sustainability and take steps, seeing them in other people learn and follow the path. And so I think a lot more emphasis on behavior change and going back to the traditions of our water management history in India will help us in ensuring sustainability.
Absolutely. I mean, government by schemes like interlinking of rivers in India, Atal Bhujal Yojana, Jal Jeevan Mission, Amrit 2.0, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, Command Area Development and Water Management, Per Drop More Crop, Sahi Fasal Campaign. These are Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Catch the Rain. That's a very interesting scheme, where we have seen the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Catch the Rain, with the theme Catch the Rain, where it falls when it falls. It was launched last year on World Water Day to cover all the blocks of all districts. And we have seen the schemes of like rejuvenation of dry ponds, puddles and wells, rain center in every district, national aquifer mapping and management program. So we have seen a large number of schemes from the central government. What else we need to do to be able to meet this challenge of shortage of water in the future?
There is one thing that I want to highlight, that we need to connect the dots. Rivers, wetlands, groundwater. It's not one at the cost of another. So groundwater, we manage it separately. River rejuvenation separately. Wetlands separately. That's not an ideal approach. So what we need to do is to sort of all the three systems as part of one basin, and any action that happens within the basin will have a reaction on the other system. So we need to actually look at the interlinkages and do programs and activities which can strengthen these interlinkages. What I'm trying to say is that if a wetland is not managed in an area where there is a huge potential for aquifer recharge, the groundwater will not get revived. And if the groundwater is not revived in several parts of our country, so the rivers will not get their base flows during the lean season. On the other side, we say that, okay, we need more water for the rivers. So we need to manage the base flows, we need to manage the groundwater, we need to manage the wetlands. So I think this connectivity, this interlinkage needs to be strengthened, and I think there is a lot more discussion, debate, and technical work that needs to happen on this.
Prime Minister Modi has today reiterated his call for saving every drop of water and said that it is heartening to see water conservation becoming a mass movement over the last few years. So obviously a large number of schemes is making people aware about the importance of water conservation, and government is doing its bit. Now onus is on the public to start saving the water. Prime Minister has also appreciated individuals and organizations working towards the conserving water. So there seems to be a push. So government is quite sincere and serious about this issue.
Water conservation has to become a mass movement because there is an urgency. And as you rightly said, when the public sector, the private sector, when individuals, Gram Panchayats, when everyone comes together, it's the power of collective action. Because water is a shared resource. That's a fundamental or an underlying fact, that water is a shared resource and it has to be managed in a collective fashion. And therefore, as you rightly said, all the stakeholders will need to work together to make it a one mass movement and a successful campaign.
As the Prime Minister rightly said, let's reaffirm our pledge to save every drop of water for the humanity, as water is the life. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
You are listening to a discussion on World Water Day and Catch the Rain campaign. The participants were Suresh Babu SV, Director of Rivers, Wetlands and Water Policy, World Wildlife Fund, India, and Sanjay Jha, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.